Welcome to HortTube. This video is going to be all about Viburnum. I think we're going to have about 20 total Viburnum in this video. We will have missed a bunch. So let us know down below this video what's your favorite Viburnum. As we were going around the JC Raulston Arboretum and here in our own garden in Raleigh, these are the ones that we could come up with here in peak flower right about the beginning of April. For those of you in more northern areas where some of the varieties are super cold hardy, zone 3 and 4 and 5, and some are only zone 8, 9, 10, 11 cold hardy. There's a mix of them in the video. They tend to overlap in flowering for us. You know, here again, you can see right here at the beginning of April, we can get all different types, some fragrant, some not, and we're gonna go through those in this video. So the first one we'll start the video with is Viburnum macrocephalum, or the Chinese snowball viburnum. We'll have Japanese snowball viburnum, which is Viburnum plicatum, and then there's an eastern snowball viburnum, Viburnum opulus, and then this is the Chinese snowball viburnum, which tends to be big and tall and upright. So we'll see this plant as tall as 20 feet in height and maybe 10 feet in width typically. Blooms super, super heavy here in the early part of the season. Just like a lot of these viburnum, they'll start kind of greenish and then get whiter and whiter and whiter. The trick that this one does, which is kind of cool, is it will repeat bloom in the fall. And a lot of the other viburnum won't repeat bloom, but the sterile nature of this one puts it into a cycle where it will try to rebloom on temperature change in the fall. This one's I would call semi-evergreen. The further south you are, the more evergreen it is. For us, it becomes fairly thin during the winter time, which is fine. But look, it comes out. We're tree forming this one. This one can be kept as a shrub that's limbed down to the base, or again, limbed up like we're in the process of doing. But this is definitely, when you think about snowball viburnums, and you'll see other, again, roundish flowering viburnums, but when you think about snowball viburnum, this is the Chinese snowball that most people are talking about with the giant inflorescences. This is a Prague viburnum. This is actually a named variety at the Raulston Arboretum called Decker. Very, very full growing variety. Prague viburnum is actually an interspecies hybrid. And so, or Praguent viburnum, some people will say, call this one. This is an evergreen viburnum, but and it's hardy in zone 5 to 8, so we don't get a lot of leafy evergreens up in zone 5. But out in open space in zone 5, it will thin for sure. It will be a much thinner plant than it is here, shooting this at the beginning of April. And this thing hasn't missed a beat in Raleigh, North Carolina in zone 8 at the Raulston Arboretum. Has a kind of a pink bud that opens to a white flower. Really great foliage on Praguent viburnum. I grew this one for years. It's just as a great low or medium size screening plant. It can get some size on it over time. I guess this one, as I'm standing here in the parking lot, is probably 10 to 12 feet tall, but you can see how it absolutely covers up in flowers. These are not particularly fragrant. It's interesting, some viburnum are really fragrant, add that to the garden, and some are fragrant to the point of being kind of off a bit, you know, not the best smell in the world, and this one just basically has no fragrance to me at all. But I grew this one for years. I just think it's a great evergreen, leafy evergreen for some colder areas in the country. For us, it just makes a great screening plant. It will colonize a bit, and this one has colonized quite a bit over the years. I've looked at this plant for a long time. It's been planted here for a long time. It's never missed a beat. Really, really great ornamental shrub, Praguent viburnum. This is Viburnum luzonicum. We have one in our garden called Snow Joey that's a named selection. It's a compact growing variety. This one's actually a Chinese native viburnum that really becomes quite a full, dense shrub over time. It is deciduous, but and hardy in zone 7 to 9, and it loses its leaves in the winter. But it actually turns the brightest red color you've ever seen. I mean, it has beautiful fall color, and it actually holds, especially the further south you are, it holds the majority of the leaves through the winter until the new foliage pushes it off. So this is a very beautiful plant around Christmas into January, especially in southern areas. Depends on how cold it gets during the winter. The one thing I will say is, again, some viburnum are going to have great fragrances, some no fragrance, and some kind of a little bit fetid. And this one is one of those. It has, the smell is a little bit off when it's actually in full flower, but it does, you can see this one has not started to, the flowers aren't opening yet, but in another week it'll just be absolutely covered up in these white flowers. Eventually they become a black fruit as they mature on this plant. It's also decorative as well, but this is probably a fairly underused plant in U.S. gardens. It's not a problematic plant for us, and it looks great and it has a lot of winter interest. But that's Viburnum luzonicum. This is Viburnum japonicum, otherwise known as the Japanese viburnum. This one's a broadleaf evergreen, so it's going to keep its leaves through the winter time. It's hardy in zone 7 to 9. This one typically will reach anywhere between 6 and 8 feet in height, maybe 6 to 8 feet in width as well. So a great little low screening shrub, really very dense habit, as you can see. This one's in part shade, but typically we can plant these out in full sun or just a little bit of shade. This one has a very showy, fragrant flower. Ultimately has a very showy fruit as well later in the season. Great winter interest because of that, and of course the beautiful foliage as well. Typically these are going to like evenly moist conditions, so not, lends itself toward an area that's moist but not wet for sure. Again, this one being kind of semi-evergreen in zone 7A-ish, but hardy in zone 7 to 9. But I really like this plant, really drawn to it. I like that kind of low spreading habit. I love how it presents the flowers, this time of year. And this is a Japanese viburnum. This is a really great ornamental plant. This is Moonlight lace viburnum, which you're going to see on tags is going to say it gets 4 feet tall, but this one is already 6 feet tall and on its way to getting bigger, obviously. This is a cross between Viburnum davidi and Viburnum tinus, both of which are kind of tender plants here in our area in Raleigh and can be kind of temperamental in our gardens, and somehow the cross between the two of them is absolutely ridiculously hardy in our gardens. And so we see this plant more and more because it's just such a good ornamental plant. Beautiful foliage, white clusters of flowers here in the spring, and again, lots of viburnums are going to have these white flowers this time of year, but it has these red petioles where it holds the flowers and the leaves on. And that red coloration combined with this super interesting foliage, that's kind of the perfect combo between Viburnum davidi and Viburnum tinus, really. It kind of has these it inherits this red from tinus and this beautiful leaf from davidi. Just absolutely beautiful plant. And this one absolutely doesn't need to flower. It's going to be fairly short flowered in the spring right now, we're filming this right at the beginning of April. But then after that, it's still just a beautiful shrub the rest of the season. But again, I think all labels are probably inaccurate on this plant for the size that it's going to get. They planted it on this little corner here at the JC Raulston Arboretum. It's filled it in a hurry. Hasn't actually been here all that long. Just a great ornamental plant though. Really, really easy, zone 7 to 9. This is one of our great native viburnums here in the southeast. This is Viburnum obavatum, and this is a selection called Raulston's Hardy. It's a dwarf compact variety of obavatum. Obavatum can get quite big, and they're actually here at the Raulston Arboretum where we're filming this, there are very large Viburnum obavatum here. These are really great because when we think about just spring flowering viburnum being done with really quickly, and that's true with a lot of the viburnum, but this one actually is one of the longer blooming shrubs in our garden at home. It really blooms a long time, probably as much as 6 months out of the calendar year, with the peak being in the spring, as it's coming out of dormancy from the winter time. Gets a kind of a reddish hue to it in the winter time, but these don't, you're going to look at this and think they've been pruning on it like crazy. You just don't have to. This is how this plant grows. The one in our garden is super compact. It's covered up in flowers right now, again, at the beginning of April. And just it's a great native plant. It's nice to have a really compact, ornamental, friendly, one for our ornamental horticulture gardens. But this one, again, is hardy or native to the southeast. Hardy in all of the southeast, but really I think native to along the Gulf Coast actually. But Viburnum obavatum Raulston's Hardy. This is a hybrid viburnum that was registered at the National Arboretum back in the 80s called Eskimo, and it has these snowball-like inflorescences with really deep tubular flowers. But this is a hybrid. It's called Eskimo, but I think it's one of Don Egoff's introductions, which, you know, he introduced so many plants to the American landscape. This one's not fragrant, but it's incredibly showy. And so, you know, we would put this in kind of the snowball group. You know, there's Chinese snowball and then Japanese snowball and Eastern snowball. This is another one. It happens to be an interspecies hybrid, but has that same kind of coloration and, you know, just absolutely covers up in flowers here in the spring. This is an interspecies hybrid viburnum called Nantucket. And I really like this viburnum. It's super, super showy here in April. So it's, you know, absolutely almost covering up in flowers. This one's in a bit of shade here at the JC Raulston Arboretum, and it's stretching quite a bit. So it's not as full as you would see this in a typical landscape. This one grows kind of tall and narrow. And when I've seen this one used properly, like on the corner of a foundation, or someplace where you have high windows and you get good sunlight, this one stays really compact. And it'll get maybe 12 feet in height, maybe 5 to 6 feet in width. So a really great choice for that. Foliage looks great. It's this is a broadleaf evergreen shrub. So with or without flowers, it should be, again, this one's stretching because it's got an overstory above it. But in our ornamental landscapes, this one would have a lot of value in a lot of different locations where you don't have a lot of ground space to take up, but you want something tall and narrow, and you want something to absolutely cover up in flowers like this. And so this is a really great viburnum for that. This is a Chindo viburnum, which has become a wildly popular screening plant. We've got houses in our neighborhood where literally the entire yard's been blocked off by Chindo viburnum. Very upright fastigiate habits. You can see we're this plant pretty strongly wants to just grow straight up. You will get some, you know, horizontal branching on it that you can decide to cut off if you want to. But it's great for most people because it's not going to eat up a ton of ground space while it gets you some height, and it can get some real height in it, 25 plus feet. In time. It really has a very nice lustrous green foliage, but we are filming this thing. This is an older 25-gallon container. I think this plant wanted to be in the ground a long time ago, so this is not the best you're ever going to see the foliage. Plus, we're filming this in February, and it's gotten stung just a bit as well from the cold. These are hardy in zones like 7B to 9B, and anyone in that range, this is again become a really, really popular screening plant. I rooted these for a few years, and I couldn't get anybody to really buy into them all that much initially, and then I kind of stopped growing them, and about the time I stopped growing them, every landscape designer in the world started using them, and now no one can grow enough of these. And if you look down, I think Steph can turn the camera, there's a group of 15 or 25-gallon containers over there that will be for sale for later in the season from this Latham's nursery here near Charlotte. But you can see nobody can even keep up. You could probably have a nursery dedicated to this plant at this point and selling it in all different sizes. Very fast growing, upright, lustrous green thing. It does flower eventually and it does fruit eventually. It has a red berry on it, but it's not really being grown for that at all. And it takes years for that to actually take place. It's really grown as a fast growing screening option for most people. This is Viburnum tinus. It's a leafy evergreen shrub that has these clusters of white flowers in the spring that are followed by a blackish, kind of metallic looking berry in the fall. And then the older growth is really this dark green, really super dark green foliage. New growth comes out slightly lighter, and the first couple leaves are tinged in this kind of burgundy color. So it's like always doing something. Anytime this plant's actively growing, it's doing something. It's one of my all-time favorite landscape plants. It's not necessarily the easiest plant to grow because it has a tendency to want to bloom way too early. So we're filming this in late February. We're in North Florida, but even here, this is kind of early for this thing to be trying to flower and already have 1.5 inches of new growth on it. I think on the tag you'll see for Viburnum tinus, it's going to say 4 to 5 feet in height or something. We've seen one that's 8 or 9 feet on NC State's campus where it was really, really old. We filmed that plant in a walk-around video on NC State's campus like last year or the year before. It's a super up-close angle because right next to this big, beautiful Viburnum tinus was a dumpster. so we didn't want to show that it was next to the dumpster. But anyway, really, it's one of those plants that every time I see it, I love the way this plant looks, right? But again, this plant, you know, and I have some frustration because really tough winter up in Raleigh can knock these back a bit before they're, you know, once they have some size and some maturity on them, they're really tough landscape plants. But the first couple of years, they can have a tendency to get burned a bit in the wintertime. One thing I'll say is, so this is Viburnum tinus, and we also have Viburnum davidi in our garden at home, and davidi can be a little bit tricky in the garden. There is a hybrid between tinus and davidi now and on the market. Moonlight lace is the variety that's the named cultivar that it's sold under. That plant is a weirdly kind of a pretty tough ornamental plant. So I take davidi, which can be finicky, and tinus can be a little bit finicky in the garden, crossed them together and got a really tough plant out of them. So if you see that Moonlight lace viburnum, that's definitely one worth having. This is really a fantastic viburnum here. This is the Fragrant snowball viburnum, or Viburnum carlocephalum, and it's a combination of Carlicei and macrophyllum, which is the Chinese snowball viburnum. And you take the fragrance of Carlicei and combine it with the large inflorescences that you get on the Chinese snowball and the size and shape of the leaf from the Chinese snowball, and you get this kind of perfect middle ground between the two of them, where you have this, as Steph said, it announced itself to us before we came around the corner here. It's very, very fragrant. This one's in a little too much shade at the Raulston. In the ground, in open space, this is going to be a very full but very large growing plant, probably 14, 15 feet tall, just like this one is in the landscape, but extremely full. This one's going to be, we'll probably call it evergreen, but it's going to be more evergreen the further south you are, just like macrocephalum is. It tends to be slightly deciduous in colder areas. But this is one of the best of the snowball, because this is the Fragrant snowball. And again, there's a lot of these that we call snowball, or called snowball viburnum, but this one you'll know before you ever get to it when it's in bloom that you have found this one. But this is one of the great ornamental viburnum. This is Viburnum Burkwoodii. This is another interspecies hybrid viburnum. It has very, very fragrant flowers on it. We've kind of missed peak flowering, and so, you know, Steph is filming the, you know, kind of the last two clusters on here, and they're not particularly fragrant because we just missed the entire thing. This is one of the more cold hardy viburnums. It is deciduous, but it has great fall color. So it has great, has great flower power, great fragrance, great fall color. Maybe ends up being slightly semi-evergreen in the deep south, but really one of the more fantastic ornamental viburnum for our landscapes because of its habit. Even though this one is in a lot of shade, you can still see how full it is overall. I'm filming this at the Raulston Arboretum. They don't go in here and just turn plants into perfect little meatballs. You know, they're trying to actually see what they do in the landscape. And so if you walk up on a plant here and you see how full this is, it is naked down at the bottom a bit because it's never been pruned on at all. But it would have been easy to keep this full all the way to the ground with a little bit of limited pruning on it in the past. But you can see with virtually no maintenance how nice of a plant Viburnum Burkwoodii is. And of course you get these fragrant flowers in the spring. And again, I love to call this Viburnum season here, in March and early April. Before hydrangea season, which everybody loves, you get Viburnum season. This is Viburnum suspensum. This is a very early flowering viburnum. We've actually missed the flowering on as we're filming this, but it's already forming the fruit, where the flowers were earlier in the season. This is not one of the more cold hardy viburnum species for sure. This one's hardy in like zone 8 to 11, but really beautiful flowering evergreen shrub with a very dense habit to it. This one can reach 12, 15 feet in height, 12, 15 feet in width if you let it. This one's colonizing a bit, so those pieces could be cut out pretty easily and you could make new plants or whatever you want to do. Great screening plant, really. It could probably benefit from a little summer pruning where it stretches a bit. In the sun, it's going to be a much fuller plant. Here it's stretching a bit for light because it's in a little bit of shade here at the Raulston Arboretum, but this one is a really great southern evergreen viburnum. This is one of our native viburnum species, Viburnum obovatum, in really the Gulf Coast area, but they're hardy enough to be up here in Raleigh, North Carolina as well. Great pollinator plant, really great 4-season plant. Gets kind of a little bit of a burgundy hue in the deepest part of the winter, but this is one of the longest blooming viburnum, where most of the viburnum come out and they bloom a week or two really quickly in the spring, and then do whatever they're gonna do with fruit or whatever. This one tends to bloom probably 5-6 months out of the year. This one's a named cultivar that's been on the market for a long time called World Class. And this is one I grew at the nursery. Well, we have Raulston's Hardy Viburnum now that's a really compact version of this. And then this one's kind of in the middle of the two, I guess. And then the regular Viburnum obovatum, you'll probably see in a landscape somewhere as high as 20 feet in height, something like that. Almost becomes a small tree. But this is a good mid-sized compact version of this great native shrub that happens to be one of the longer blooming flowering plants we can have in our garden, and finally getting some appreciation, especially with Raulston's Hardy being available and being such a great little dwarf ornamental plant. Again, this one's in a lot of shade too, and look how compact it is. Really has a great habit here. A lot of the other plants in this particular area are really stretching out quite a bit. This is Viburnum mongolicum, and I actually don't know a whole lot about this one. I haven't run into this one very often over the years. It's a deciduous viburnum, and it's less heat tolerant than some. So where there are viburnum that are only hardy in zone 8 to 11, there are also viburnum that are hardy up to zone 3 and only down to zone 7. Such an interesting group of plants that way. I do know this one has an edible fruit. I don't know how that's used, in Asia. I have no idea, but it has the beautiful flowers in the spring, slightly fetid, where we're going to get some viburnum that are going to be pleasantly fragrant, some are unpleasantly fragrant, and this one has a slightly off odor to me overall, so it's probably being pollinated by flies or something like that. But then the fruit form after that, and again, I understand those to be edible. It is deciduous, so it'll lose its leaves in the winter, but it's got good structure here in the garden at the JC Raulston Arboretum, and it's such an interesting, you'll see it from a mile away when it's in full flower like this, and then it's a kind of plant that fade back into the background a bit and allow other things to kind of show off in the garden at that point. This is a great evergreen viburnum. This is Viburnum cinnamomum. Think about this one as like Viburnum Davidii, but a much larger version of it. So it has the similar, you'll get the same red petioles holding the leaves, really incredible leaf, without flowers at all. This is a beautiful leaf on this plant. Not as cold, same as Davidii, not as cold hardy as some other viburnums. So this one's only going to be cold hardy in like zones 8 to 10, 8 to 11, something like that. So where Davidii typically we keep in our gardens, 4 to 6 feet, this one obviously gets quite a bit bigger than that. And I think it kind of has this habit in the garden, I think, that kind of lends itself to an Asian garden, where it's just, the structure is really interesting. It has these kind of curvy branches on it as it goes up and out and in several different directions. This is a plant that you want to plant and give it some room, because I think it takes on its best character if it's just allowed to do what this one's doing here at the JC Raulston Arboretum. I don't get a lot of fragrance on this at all, good, bad, or ugly. Some viburnum are good, some are not. So this one's kind of very muted fragrance overall, but it does develop that metallic blue berry that Davidii gets. So very similar, again, similar. A larger growing Viburnum Davidii, if you're familiar with it. This is Viburnum glabratum. This is at the JC Raulston Arboretum. I think this one is, at this point, these were planted in a cluster. So we're looking at something that's about 8 feet tall and maybe 4 feet wide, and there's 2 of them side by side, but you can see the large inflorescences on this. This one's not really fragrant. I don't pick up any fragrance from it. Very large foliage on this one. This one is deciduous, and it's hardy up to zone 5. So a lot of people watching this, hardy from zone 5 to 8. This one develops a red fruit, and we'll see viburnum with like metallic blue fruit, black fruit, pretty typical. And then there are some that have really, really red fruit, like Viburnum opulus, is a species that has red fruit, and the fruit is quite showy, so you get almost an extension of the flowering time, with that showy red fruit. Viburnum opulus sterile is the one that's typically sold in the trade, which is the snowball one, and you won't get the red fruit on that. But if you get the non-sterile Viburnum opulus, you can get the red fruit on it. And it's a pretty good ornamental plant, very compact grower, where this one's going to be a bit bigger in size. But both of those varieties are very, very cold hardy. This is Viburnum carlisii, and we missed kind of peak flower. We're over here at the JC Raulston Arboretum, and a couple days ago it was just absolutely full of flower. We had some weather beat it up just a bit. You can see the pink in this, and this is pretty typical. A lot of these Viburnum, when we're showing all white flowers, a lot of times the buds are pink, and then they open to white, and you can still see a little bit of that pink in this one. This is one of the absolute best fragrant Viburnum out there. This one is not the most heat tolerant. In fact, you'll see a lot of times zones 4 to 7 on this one. This one is deciduous. Here we are in zone 8. It's doing fine, but it is protected. It's in a slightly protected space. Its roots aren't getting blasted out here by the sun, so we can get away with this one in zone 8. Just know it needs to be in a slightly protected space. This may be the replacement for our a lilac that's died at our house here in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is just, again, when this thing's in flower, you can smell it. There's 3 of them planted here together, and it'll just absolutely stop you in your tracks when it's in full bloom. Blooms are showy, foliage is beautiful, shape of this plant is usually very compact, just a great overall ornamental plant combined with this incredible fragrance and a kind of a welcome to spring. This is what this plant is. This is a pink doublefile Viburnum, and I don't know why this one's actually not pink at this moment. It usually has a light pink inflorescence on it. I don't know if it's this one's in too much shade, but when I've seen this one, it does have a pink hue to it, so I promise you, but it does. Doublefile Viburnum is Viburnum plicatum, and then form tomentosan. Really long name for these. We have one called Shasta in our garden. They tend to have this layered growth habit on them and lend themselves to being pruned up into small trees, which is what we're doing on ours in the garden at the house. This one's in quite a bit of shade, so it's really stretched up in there. It's probably 18 feet up in there at this point, but it is in full flower right now. Develops a red fruit on it later. And again, if it had a little bit more sun, it'd be a much more compact habit than it is here. This is Viburnum opulus, otherwise known as a cranberry viburnum. Eastern snowball viburnum is the sterile form of this. You'll get a snowball-like flower. This is the non-sterile version of it. They haven't started opening yet, but they have a flat cluster of flowers on them. Not really any real fragrance to this. If it is, it's slightly fetid, if anything. But this one is a great plant for having red fruit on it later in the season that the birds absolutely love. Really like this plant. I grew the Eastern Snowball Viburnum version of this, Viburnum opulus sterile, for years, and then I accidentally had one of these, just the straight species, with the flat cluster of flowers, and then it gets the red, where the other one is sterile. This one gets the red fruit on it, and I like this one a lot better. It gets great fall color, extremely cold hardy. So this one is like a zone 4 cold hardiness. We're actually on the bottom here in zone 8A in Raleigh. We're on the bottom of where this one is actually cold hardy, but this is a great 4-season plant. And this one's stretched a lot. This has been here at the Raulston for a long, long time, but you can actually keep this plant more in that 4 to 6 foot range if you want to. You can size control it a bit. Little later flowering than some of the other Viburnum. We're shooting this bunch of Viburnum here at the same time, and they're all in peak flower pretty much, except for this one is just budded up. So again, slightly later, which probably prevents it from getting some cold damage. This is one of our great native Viburnums. This is Viburnum dentatum, otherwise known as the Arrowwood Viburnum. Has great foliage, great flowers, great berries, the whole thing that you would hope for. They're not the most heat tolerant. We're here filming this in zone 8A in Raleigh, North Carolina at the Raulston Arboretum, and this won't be the greatest specimen of Viburnum dentatum you've ever seen. These are hardy like zones 2 or 3, I think, down to 7 or 8. I think you'll see 8 on a lot of lists, but they can struggle a bit here in zone 8. It's deciduous. This one's just leafing back out for the spring, forming its flower buds right now. The flowers are non-fragrant clusters of white flowers that we would expect on a Viburnum, and then you'll get these berries that are this metallic blue. The species here can get quite big in time, 12, 15 feet if you let them. Good fall color as well. A lot of breeding in this one. So we see a lot of named cultivars out there in branded containers on this one, where there's selections being made for even better fruit, even better flowering, more compact habit, that kind of thing. But if you see those, they're definitely worth a try in your garden anywhere, pretty much anywhere north, you know, of the Raleigh area where we are, you know, up into Canada. These are definitely worth a try. And again, one of our great native plants. This is probably the most common of the double-file viburnum. This is Shasta viburnum. It grows in this beautiful layered habit, great flowers in the springtime, just showing off here. The actual flower parts haven't opened up in the middle, but they have, you know, have this little ring around the outside, inflorescence around the outside, sterile inflorescence around the outside that shows up first. Really beautiful plant that forms a red fruit on it later in the season. Great foliage. This one's deciduous, but because of its layered habit in the wintertime, it looks it's almost as interesting in the winter as it is in the summer. And that's hard to say on some plants that lose their leaves, but this is definitely fits that description. It grows really wide, and so if I use this as a shrub that's limbed to the ground, it's going to take up a lot of space here in our Raleigh garden. So we're in the process of limbing it up, and ultimately this thing can reach 20 feet in height. Steph's sister's got one in Connecticut that's at least 20 feet in height. Super incredibly showy plant. I will say on some of these viburnum, we cut this one pretty hard to try to bring it into shape and show it off like it is now, which is beautiful form. But it didn't like that pruning on it, and so it kind of skipped a year flowering well, and now here we are 2 years later and it's back to full flower again. Hasn't colored up completely. A lot of these white flowering plants like this, you'll see it's kind of a greenish hue to it at the beginning, and then it gets brighter and brighter white as time goes on. Great fall color, great winter look, great flowering plant, great fruit, really beautiful foliage. I mean, this is one of definitely my top viburnum choices. This is David viburnum, or Viburnum davidi. Has really beautiful foliage, great flowers in the early part of the spring here. Tends to have a fairly compact habit, although we'll occasionally see one that's gotten up pretty tall in the future. Viburnum cinnifolium is a larger, almost like this one, but gets in a much larger than Viburnum davidi. This one's definitely a southern evergreen viburnum that I love this plant and I love the foliage on it. It can be somewhat tricky to grow. I think we'll probably, when people see this plant, you know, there's probably people that watching this video that have tried to grow this one. It can be a little bit tricky. There is a cross with this one and Viburnum tinus. Viburnum tinus will also be in this video, where tinus and davidi have been crossed together, and one called Moonlight lace that's really, really hardy. It's an interesting one because tinus can be a little tricky in the landscape. Davidi can be a little tricky in the landscape. Moonlight lace is just a giant, evergreen, fast-growing viburnum hybrid of the two. It's got some hybrid vigor in it that makes it seem to be a hardier landscape plant. But I definitely don't discount Viburnum davidi. It's got the red petioles holding the leaf onto the stem, which is really one of the showiest things about this particular plant. This is one of our great native viburnums. This is Viburnum nudum. Actually, it's native in, tends to be coastal savanna areas, tend to be wet or seasonally wet areas typically, but it does fine in our ornamental landscapes as well. We had this one in our main garden and it was in a little too much shade and it was stretching. It's a big, beautiful plant, as you can see. We just moved it. It's just leafing out now, so it's a little thin on camera, I'm sure. But it wasn't blooming as well as it could. Now, just in the time I've moved it this winter, it looks like it's gonna flower a lot more than it has in the past years. This one gets a cluster of white flowers, just like lots and lots of viburnum, and they're fragrant. And then this one gets very different color fruit on it. You'll see blues, reds, kind of purpley colors on this one. Just depends. You get a lot more set if you have multiples of these. So that's one thing about a lot of these viburnum that you're going to need. You probably need more plants to see more of that. There's good fall color, great structure. Winter Thur, I think, is the named cultivar that's out on the market that's been around for a long time. This is just the straight species. It doesn't really need a selection. If you give it space and give it the opportunity, this is a great ornamental plant. It's a You know, being a native, it is a host plant for a particular butterfly and probably several other things that visit it that are unique to this plant. This is a Blackhaw viburnum, otherwise known as Viburnum prunifolium. And I think that is in relation to the fact that the foliage kind of looks like our native black cherry. That's where it gets that name, prunus. That's where that comes from. This one is a pretty common native plant to the eastern part of the United States, and it's a suckering, colonizing viburnum. This one is on the back edge of our property, just in the wooded area behind us. We planted one over here in our native garden, and we'll probably have it be more of a single trunk kind of specimen and not allow it to just kind of colonize. But in the wild, this is how this plant actually grows. Gets those white clusters of flowers, as you would expect, and then it forms a kind of a blackish berry on it that's edible by humans and birds. And so that's something that I probably should say more often in some of these viburnum videos, that some of the fruit is edible on some of them, and around the world they are used for those kinds of purposes. This great fall color, deciduous shrub. Again, it'll colonize if you let it, but typically in our ornamental gardens we'll probably keep it, you know, a little more tame and a little more sheared off. But it'll spring flower, and in more sun it's going to flower a whole lot more. Steph had to come in real close on this one little cluster of flowers here because this one is in deep shade. It's got all kinds of things growing over the top of it and all kinds of weedy things growing all over the top of it. So this is not its best form, but we wanted to show you one in flower and show you that, you know, when I say it's native, it's literally native to in the wooded space right behind our house. And we're also using it as an ornamental over in the ornamental garden if you're following along with the channel.